All right, we're going to call the Parks Committee to order. With the clerk please call the roll.
Alderwoman Krewson. Here. Alderman French. Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Villa.
Here.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Present.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Present.
Alderwoman Green. Chairman Ortman.
Present.
President Reed.
Here.
8 present, you have a quorum.
Okay, first on the agenda, we're going to hear Board Bill 176. Alderwoman Krewson and Alderman Cotter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members
of
of the committee, and Mr. President. Alderman COATAR and I are co-sponsors on this bill. And let me just give you a real brief oversight on the bill. But before I do that, there are a number of people here that are interested. They're here, a couple little short presentations, but also available to answer your questions. So from the History Museum, Harry Rich is the board chair. He's right there. Fran Levine is the president. What's your title, Fran? President? That's what I thought. Of Dr. Levine of the History Museum. Karen Gehring with the History Museum. Rich Bradley, Board of Public Service. Parks Department. Dan Skillman. So a lot of folks here that have worked hard together on this effort. So let me just real briefly tell you what Board Bill 176 is about. It is to authorize the Construction Oversight, Museum Development, and Operating Agreement for the Missouri History Museum to construct and operate the Soldiers Memorial Museum and its collection. It is not a lease of that property. It is an operating agreement. The hopefully you've all been at one time or another over to Soldiers Memorial. There are a lot of really interesting and great artifacts there. However, they haven't been able to be really cared for in the way that these valuable artifacts should be. So over the last year, maybe not quite a year, the History Museum has been processing and inventorying and cleaning and cataloging all of the collection that's there. And what this board bill does is this authorizes the History Museum to redevelop the museum, to operate the museum after it's redeveloped. The city will continue to own the building. The city will continue to own all of the collection. But the History Museum will manage it and care for it for us. History Museum has raised the funds through multiple donors in order to make these improvements to Soldiers Memorial. The museum will continue to be open and free to the public. They will be able to have events there, and they will give priority to veterans for those events, which seems to make sense. There are currently two city employees who work at the History Museum, and those city employees will continue to be city employees. The term of the agreement is really indefinite, but either party can terminate if they're in default for some reason under the agreement, or if they have differences and they're not able to work out those differences, so between the History Museum and the city. And if that were to happen, the agreement would actually terminate 2 years from that time, because we don't want to just all of a sudden have something happen to it. All the costs, including an endowment, are being covered by Missouri History Museum. I think it's a great opportunity. That's an editorial comment here. A great opportunity for us to really respect the Soldiers Memorial that we have there, and to respect the collection that we have there and to let the professionals handle this for us. So from my point of view, it's a very win-win situation all the way around. I don't know if there are any questions for me, or we can let the History Museum give a little brief presentation, whatever you like, Mr. Chairman.
Before we go to questions, why don't we see if we have any more information from the speakers, give them a couple of minutes. So Francis Levine, you signed up first, so you can go first.
We had that orchestrated a little.
Thank you, Chairman Orton and Aldermen and women. This is my first time appearing before you, and I'm very happy that it's to talk about a project that we are very passionate about and very grateful for the collaboration that we've already had with Rich Bradley in the Board of Public Works, with the city employees at Soldiers Memorial. We have, as a board, Chairman Rich has been with us at public meetings that we've done at Soldiers Memorial, really listening to what this building means to veterans and to the community. We've heard so much about the need to restore the building, to rehab the systems, but to not alter that important historic feeling that that building has, to honor the service of men and women who've served in the armed forces, and to tell the stories of men and women from St. Louis who served in the armed services, and also their families and the sacrifices they've made. So we look forward to it. The processing has been going on for about a year. We have moved collections into better conditions, and with a grant that we received, we've been able to begin to clean those artifacts, and it's something that we call rehousing. And I can tell you that artifacts never had it so good. They've come out of a basement that didn't have ideal conditions, but was about the best they can do there, and is now in a city-owned building. Those collections continue to belong to the city. We have just hired the staff to work with the collections with a grant. After this project, should it be successful with your endorsement, we again will hire staff specific to work on that project and to begin the rehab. We have undertaken some conceptual studies, and with your indulgence, I would have Karen Gehring, who is Facilities and Operations Managing Director at the History Museum, present in our dreams and in our budget what this would look like. If that's all right with you, Chairman Ortman, we will proceed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You might want to go to the mic so we can all hear you. And
we also can't see it down at that end with it. Yeah.
Better if you bring it back like this.
I think the podium is what's.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go be Vanna, Jack.
Mr. Chairman, we finally found a use for COATAR.
So this architectural rendering shows the envisioned redevelopment and restoration of the Soldiers Memorial and the Court of Honor, which was is actually part of the Soldiers Memorial, but a lot of people don't realize that the two work together. The Soldiers Memorial itself was originally built by the city through the Public Works Administration to honor the war dead from World War I. The Court of Honor was built to honor those from World War II. Part of this project, as Dr. Levine mentioned, is that we have donors that are willing to pay for the renovation of the memorial, to put in HVAC, air conditioning, bring the building up to contemporary museum standards. We're proposing that the 2-block area work together as a unit, and that the Court of Honor have these pedestrian connections to the original memorial. We're proposing the water features with the Court of Honor to bring a dignity to that part of the area. The donors will be working with us to pay for all of the restoration work, and will also be providing an endowment for the ongoing operations of the Soldiers Memorial. I can go into much more detail, but I know you wanted the quick version, so.
Alderman, could you kind of set it up here facing the camera so they could kind of,
So they can see it.
yeah,
Look at this one. The public.
got to get it while you can.
The rendering that Alderwoman Krewson is holding shows a view of the plaza from the front steps of the Soldiers Memorial, shows an area where outside ceremonies and programs can take place, and looking across Market Street at the municipal courts. And then the final rendering shows the pedestrian connection between the Court of Honor and the Soldiers Memorial building itself. Over the years, there have been different monuments that have been erected for later conflicts to honor the war dead, and the proposal is to build these standardized monuments along the pedestrian connection so that individuals from St. Louis that lost their lives in Korea, Vietnam, the conflicts in Afghanistan, etc., will be honored by having their names engraved along the walkways.
Alderwoman Krewson, could you bring him down here so the other members of the committee could see him also?
Joe? Did you see? Oh, okay.
Be happy to answer any questions.
Why don't we hear from Rich first? Do you want to come up? Do you have anything to say, or?
Good
This is
afternoon.
Rich Bradley.
Thank you. So, as the authority, the director, department director, who the museum, the building, the memorial falls under, I just want to talk for just a couple of minutes in support of this agreement, this board bill. As you know, the memorial is our regional asset, which honors our veterans and our soldiers who have fought in wars. And over the past 7 years that I've been here, it's been very challenging at best to operate the facility, to maintain the facility, and do all the things that we do over there with 2 people and a $146,000 budget. I basically have 2 folks that work over there 24, and I'm probably expounding this just a little bit, but they probably work at least 12 hours a day, 7 days a week with all the different events that happen over there. Whether it be the actual museum itself, whether it be veterans events that happen at nighttime, stand downs on weekends, or whatever the case may be, these people always have to be there. And so this plan brings us to a level of getting things done there. We work very closely with the Missouri History Museum. As Fran mentioned, it's been a great partnership and enjoyable to do, but in my mind, it's a dream come true. It's relieves the city of a tremendous amount of burden worrying about how to do something that we just can't fund. The HVAC equipment over there all needs to be replaced. The windows need to be replaced, the roof, the lighting, the electrical, everything in that building that has issues that we can't possibly afford to do on $146,000 a year. And so as we work through this program, the idea is to make this a world-class museum and a world-class facility, a destination point for people to come and visit and enjoy. And I believe that with this plan in place, it will accomplish that goal. We still have 2 people who will be on my TO who will work at the museum as the liaison for the city. We'll work with the Missouri History Museum as our liaison for the city. As the Alderwoman mentioned, the building and the collection are still ours. It's been a goal for a number of years to make the museum a accredited museum, and step 1 is already in process by a previous agreement with Missouri Historical Society. Over 6,000 artifacts, as you heard, are currently being cleaned and cataloged and stored in a proper fashion. And what this will do is bring the plan to fruition. Not a lease, it's an agreement, and I believe that it's going to work well for the city as well as for all our veterans.
Alderwoman, you want to come back up? He's being shy.
Well, everyone, thanks for taking the time today. I do hope you'll consider this bill favorably and give it a due pass recommendation. This is a big project, not only for downtown, for the whole region. To have a world-class, military museum right in the heart of downtown, I think is going to attract a lot of people. It's a great project. It's a great honor to the veterans that have served our country from St. Louis. And I'm very excited about this project and thankful to the History Museum and its staff and its donors and the city and BPS for putting this plan together. Alderwoman, want to wrap this up?
Well, we're not going to wrap it up yet. We're going to open it up to the committee for questions first. So, and then if the committee has any questions for any of our speakers, we can do that too. But, we'll start out with Alderwoman Krewson. So, Alderman French.
So can you just go over the funding of it? Is this privately funded?
It's privately funded. We're not at liberty to say who.
Okay. And is there an estimated value or cost of the project?
I think it's in the range, can we say a range here? Yes. I think it's in the range of 30 million bucks.
Okay. And none of that comes from us though, right?
None of that comes from us.
Well, that's the most important question. Okay, no other questions, thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro.
I have no questions.
Alderman Villa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What a wonderful marriage. I mean, this has been I don't want to say stepchild, but an orphan available for the taking, and no one's taken it upon themselves. So this certainly, the schematics look exciting. I think it's great. May I just light the Alderwoman, so we'll still have on our TO a director of Soldiers Memorial?
The 2 people who work there will still stay in their same position.
And that is the one is a mayoral appointment, is it not?
I don't think so. Okay.
The director of Soldiers Memorial is not a mayoral appointment?
It's under me, and I'm a mayoral appointment. It's the superintendent and the civil service.
Was it years ago?
There's an advisory committee that you might be thinking of that I believe is appointed by the mayor. But
No, I know, we used to, like, Freddie Williams years ago, we called him the master of disaster. He was, oh no, that wasn't Soldiers Memorial though.
Right.
Okay.
But the mayor did appoint somebody, you're right.
Seems to me that it was an appointment of the mayor, but
Under
I
one of the mayors with some money going missing.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I'm not speaking to you, Alderman. You moved the picture down to your end, and I couldn't see it. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you.
We have a sidebar.
I see that.
I don't see Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Ingracia. You missed me, don't you?
I do. It's good to have you back. I just have one question out of curiosity, maybe more for Rich. I know that the police department and the city streets department has equipment like fiber and maybe a server for some of the video cameras. Is that staying there, or is it?
So there is a fiber line in the basement, but part of the plan, and we probably didn't get into that today, is to separate that fiber room from the actual museum. It will be walled off and secure. There'll be an exterior access door, which allows.
Rich, will you come up on the mic so
Thank you.
we have to get everything on the camera, so.
Previously, there was a fiber room in the basement. You would access it through the museum, but because we are trying to limit the access to the museum because of artifacts, museum standards, we'll build a separate room in the tunnelway, working with traffic in the police department. The fiber remains there, it's walled off, and there'll be an entrance from the outside of the building into that room, so it's secure from the museum as well as from the outside.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderwoman Tyus?
Got several, okay. I want to know about, first of all, so this agreement would be between who exactly? Is this agreement going to be between the city?
This agreement is between the city. You can look in this, at the signature page on page 11 of the agreement.
Right. Okay,
It's
but
between the city and the Missouri
the
Historical
Missouri-
Society.
Right. And with the city, we're going to have Rich as the person who's going to be, and a city attorney as the person authorizing, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I looked at how we would terminate this. And so basically, we would terminate if there was a material breach that couldn't be cured within 45 days, or if it's something that's ongoing for longer. And if we terminate, let me see what else here's the question.
Or for any other cause.
Okay, and that's my question, so, which either party in its sole discretion has to termination. So could it be that we just don't think this is working out? I mean, what is cause? That's, I guess, is my question. What do we anticipate? Did it actually have to be a breach, or was that put in there so that if the parties just think this isn't working out the way they thought, that they could,
Yeah,
give
I mean, I
clear
think,
notice and then,
you know, it says any termination pursuant to subpart 3, which is the part that says at the sole discretion,
right,
makes an ongoing relationship problematic. I don't know the definition of problematic, but if they're not getting along,
that's right, that's what I
okay?
want, right.
I mean, that's the way I read this,
Okay,
but
that's
I'm
what I
not a
wanted-
lawyer.
That's how I'm reading it,
Herein-
and that's what I wanted to know, if that's what it was intended.
They have
okay?
to talk about it first.
Right.
Make a good faith attempt. You know, they got to go to marriage counseling, right?
Then 2 years.
And then they can terminate it, but the termination won't be effective for 2 years after the termination, which I think is a very responsible way of winding down something that's this major.
Okay, so, and mostly I do, except for sometimes it's such a material breach that you need to get out for something that's really bad that's happened, okay? And so, and that happened already when it was under, the alderman from the 11th is absolutely correct. The mayor did used to, I don't know what happened since I've been gone, but we had something terrible happen over at Soldiers Memorial back,
I remember that.
right, okay, so I don't want to talk about it. It's just that it wasn't a good thing. So I'm just saying, if something like that happens, then we anticipate that we would talk about it, we would try to get it corrected and try to get past it, is what we're doing.
Sure.
Okay. All right. And you said that we are not at liberty. We're going to go into somebody donating $30 million, and when we say, who is that we are not at liberty to disclose, who knows who's donating this money? I'm very uncomfortable when I hear, even though it's a lot of money, that somebody's donating, and then the Board of Aldermen can't know. You know, that makes me real uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't care what the money is. In past history, that has come back to bite people when they have voted for stuff that they didn't know where the money came from. So who will know where the money comes from?
The History Museum.
Okay, and just to go way overboard, it could be the KKK, and we wouldn't know, and then, so if I then get approached later about why did you support this thing, and I'm just saying, I'm not saying it is, we wouldn't, it would go through the History Museum and not to the, directly to the city.
Right.
And that's why we're setting up this coalition between the city and the History Museum as a way to get money in.
Management agreement, which,
Okay. And what do we do right now? I guess this question is from Rich. What do we do right now? If somebody wanted to donate money to us right now, do we not have a mechanism or to donate money?
I don't know the answer to that. Hey, Rich.
Rich, you want to come up?
Can somebody donate money now?
If
What's the mechanism now for donations?
Okay, so the mechanism right now for any donations to the city is that it goes to the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Public Service approves anything, whether it be a vehicle, money, those type of things.
Okay, so then my question is, this mysterious person who's out here is given the $30 million. If he or she wanted, they could donate it directly to the city of St. Louis?
They could.
Would we
That's
want
always
that?
the question you have to answer is they could donate it to the city of St. Louis, but in many occasions that we see, we get items donated because the donor wants very specific things. And so, for example, what happens is if they would donate the money to the city, then our process is set up for public works, typically, bridges, streets, so forth, not reconstruction of a museum to museum standards. I will tell you, I know nothing about museum standards. These individuals from the History Museum are experts in the field, and so the donor works through them to be the caretaker of it. Now, what we've been very careful to do is to incorporate many of the things that we require as the city into it, such as the MWBE participation and so forth. My staff will also watch and help manage the project to ensure on a city building that we're getting all the things that we require. But as far as being experts, it's a better path to have them do it rather than us do it.
Okay, and why, can I just keep asking, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I still have some more questions for him, is it all right?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I was reading about sessioning and accessioning. Do we do that right now? And that's trading, selling, and are we doing that right now?
We accession all the time. Whenever a person comes in and brings an artifact in, and we have this happen multiple times a week, and they say, I'd like to turn in my, my grandfather's uniform or rifle or whatever he died. So we do what is called a perpetual donation at this point in time. We take the item in, we write them a letter of receipt, and we say, thank you, it's a perpetual donation, and then the Board of Public Service receives that as a donation to the collection. The deaccessioning we have not done, and we have not done that because, again, the museum folks who are way more knowledgeable about this than I am will tell you that it's a very touchy thing to do. If you take an item that is badly damaged and you have to deaccession it, there's a process whereby you have to go back to the donor and make sure they don't want it back. And sometimes it even comes to the point where a deaccessionment may be a destruction of an item so that it doesn't go back on the street and somebody doesn't sell it as, an item and be disrespectful to the donor. So we do accessioning all the time. Deaccessioning, we have not. So this is going to be very good for us to help us relieve ourselves of some of those items that are not in tip-top condition.
So what are we doing with this stuff? We just gathering and
At the moment, when the stuff was in the building,
Okay.
it was find another closet, find another place to put it, do our best to keep it in place. And what we're going to do with it through this process is everything will have to come out of the building for the reconstruction or the restoration. Many of the artifacts have already went to 1520 Market and are in the repository that have been built. Large items like Jeeps and submarines and other things that are over there that will not be able to go to 1520 Market will be put into a shipping container, and they'll be taken to the police property custody, and they'll be stored there in their climate control warehouse until the project is done. Items that are to be possibly deaccessioned, and we don't know what those are yet, will go into a different shipping container, and they will also be stored until we have an opportunity to figure out what to do with them. We don't want to bring things back or put it in storage that is beyond restoration.
But what I'm reading then, the museum would make a suggestion as that what we should get rid of, be it whichever way we do it. Ultimately, we would start to get rid of things then, okay?
That's
by
correct.
giving it back to the donor if we can locate it, and then if not by giving it back to the donor, if somebody else wants it or sell it or whatever we would do. Is that correct?
Right, whatever the process would be, and we would rely on the experts to help us with it.
Okay, but then as I'm reading the contract, then they would come back to the city before they do it, and we'd have 60 days to say yes or no to it.
That's
Is that
correct, because ultimately, we own the collection. They are managing the collection for us. So just like any other person that manages something for us, they're gonna get our ultimate approval. They would come, to the Board of Public Service. They would come to, supply how we do deaccessioning of other items in the city and make sure that we all agree to it. Obviously I can't speak for every case, but I would be relatively certain the experts would come with a very detailed suggestion of what we should get rid of, and we would look at that very carefully.
That's my question or point was.
Glad to talk more about that if you wanted more depth on
No,
this.
I have a question. He wasn't letting me get, so my question would be, so if you're gonna be the person and they're the experts, how would we know if we should keep anything? I'm saying, well, we have an expert, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of unequally yoked, that you got this expert over here telling you this, this, and this. So how would we ever say no to anything they would suggest?
Well, I would say that from the city side, not the History Museum side, say they recommend something. The lady who is currently the superintendent of Soldiers Memorial is a PhD in history.
Okay.
And she's very well versed, and she will continue on my staff. She's very well versed in the artifacts and where they came from and their significance for period and so forth. So she would be an ultimate internal recommendation to say, yes, we agree, or maybe we don't for some reasons until we look further into it.
Okay, and I have one final question here. I don't know where it is now. No further questions. Oh, yes, it is. Here it is. I wanted to know about if these items you showed us. So this is in front of the actual Soldiers Memorial, and would it go over to the park? Is that what that's showing? Would it then connect with the library? Is that kind of what we're having? I'm not quite sure.
It doesn't connect to the library, but let's see which picture.
Because on the other side of the street is
So this view is basically from the steps of the Soldiers Memorial looking south towards City Hall.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because this is the municipal court building, so you're standing
Okay.
there now and you're looking.
So that park is going to stay there on the other side between the library? Right. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alderwoman?
I'm finished, I'm sorry. I read that too much, huh?
I wasn't quick enough, see. Alderwoman Murphy?
Just one comment. I said, full disclosure, I'm a longstanding member of the Missouri History Museum, so I'm there quite often. And so I'm very excited about the marriage, as someone said before, of the two, because I know I went to the History Museum when we called it the Jefferson Memorial years ago, and I see the improvements and everything all the time as I take my grandkids and everything. So I'm all very excited about it. Just one question. Is there any street closings in connection with any of this in that memorial?
The design does call for repaving or street improvements, let's call it that. I don't know if you're going to be able to drive through there or not. If, it's owned by the city now, and
Right.
it'll continue to be owned by the city, so the city would be able to block it off or whatever if they wanted to.
Okay,
So.
that's all. Thank you.
I don't see Alderwoman Green. President Reed?
No question.
And Alderwoman Spencer?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have a couple questions. There's an effective date here to be filled in, I suppose, but this is an ongoing relationship, I understand, so there is no end date? Is that correct?
There is no end date.
Okay. And so the two people who will continue to work there with the addition of a couple of other staff, those will be paid by this new body, is that correct?
The two people who work there now will continue to be paid for by the city.
By the city. And so that $146,000 budget that Mr. Bradley talked about, will that continue to be allocated?
It will.
Okay.
It's anticipated that it will, yes.
And
I'm right, aren't I? Okay. I thought so.
okay. And so will that be oversight by this new entity, or will that continue to just be direct oversight by the city?
It's direct oversight by the city, but the idea is that, you know, it would be a very collaborative, and History Museum staff and city staff would work jointly together.
Okay, great. It sounds like a very good collaboration. I imagine it was a lot of work, so very good for the city.
Yeah, I think it is. Thank you.
Complete?
Yep, thank you.
Alderman Villa, before I get to my questions, Alderman Villa's got another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lyda, I don't know who to address this to. What role will the museum board have in this? Is that a fair question?
The History Museum Board,
Yes.
they oversee all the activities of the History Museum. I don't know if anybody wants to give a better answer to that question.
Come up to the mic, please. And who are you?
I'm Harry Rich, and I am chairman of the board of the Missouri Historical Society. The agreement is between the Historical Society and the city. We also manage the History Museum through an agreement with the Museum History Subdistrict. But our Board of Trustees will have the responsibility for the oversight of how the memorial is managed. There will be an endowment set up from a donor that will allow us to cover the expenses of managing the memorial, in addition to the two city employees. But the Board of Trustees will have oversight over the management of the operation.
Thank you.
Rich, you want to come up? When this gets passed and signed and it's all there, what would the construction timeline be? You know, how long, you know, it's two different questions I want to ask. How long would Soldiers Memorial be actually closed down before it could reopen again? Are we looking at a year? Or, and I know you can't give an exact, but just an estimate.
So what we see at this time is we've worked through a very conceptual, high-level design to get to the renderings that you see. Once the agreement would be approved, we would enter into a design, do our 30, 60, 90% design. It would hope that we would be able to get to construction, you know, sometime in spring of 2016. The anticipated construction schedule would be about 18 months for the actual renovations, close to open.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions?
I had something that I remember what my other.
I'm sure you would.
That's good. That's right. I got 10 years of questions. Unfair 10 years.
Who far?
Rich probably. It talks about a concession and their authority to operate a concession. Do we operate a concession in the building now at all?
No, currently there is not. There is, you walk into the memorial, the center TAF in the middle, two galleries on each side. There's an auditorium upstairs. There's office space upstairs. SEMA had previously been in the basement and they have vacated. There is no current concessions there at all.
So we anticipate building something so that they could sell, like if you go over to the History Museum or whatever,
Right.
something like that.
That's
Not
correct.
quite, probably not as big as that, but something smaller. And you also talked about that you included in the agreement about the same things we would with any city contract about WBE and BE. That's all included.
That's right.
And who would be, you would be in charge of making sure that they,
So, yeah, my office would oversee.
Rich, hold up a minute. Dr. Levine, you want to come up?
Okay.
Because I'm getting different head shakes here, so.
okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure that we're correct, you know, and answering the questions. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman Orman and Alderwoman Titus. I think
Alderwoman.
Alderwoman.
I got it changed. I never will go by it, ever.
I appreciate that.
Because women rock, okay?
Yes, we do, thank you. I just wanted to clarify your question. I think the size of a concession in that building would be very small.
Yeah,
It
right.
allows us to operate a store. It might be more like a cart.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I
and
understood that, right.
So
Nope.
I just didn't want you to think that we were getting ready to have a,
No, my question, I said, I don't think it'll be like the History Museum, because that's much bigger. But I thought you were saying it was different about who was going to do the enforcement of MWBE, MB. That wasn't the difference.
no,
Oh,
we will,
okay.
no.
Because he
that
was in the
will-
middle of something else. I understood the.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point in time, I'll
He was in
entertain,
the middle of answering my
Oh.
question, and you cut him off.
I thought she kind of answered you.
No, she was answering about the concession. He was answering about construction and who all would be included. We're on the same page. Okay.
So the MWBE requirements are in the program. That was part of our discussions early, that even though it is private funding, we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing, and the History Museum has been very good about that. And so my office will oversee and work with them. They will have a construction manager doing it, but we will work with them and make sure that, you know, they're honoring the agreement and the terms that we have in the agreement.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, before we vote, I just want to make, I do not like secret donations, so I'm going to be voting present. I think everything you said is good, but I do not go along with secret donations, and I'm not going to now, so I'm going to make that on the record that I will not be voting for this, not because it's not a good thing. I just don't like, I think that we, the Board of Aldermen, ought to know who's giving money to the city. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 176.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Board Bill number 176 be voted out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman Krewson.
Aye.
Alderman French.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Villa.
Aye.
Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Green. Chairman Ortman.
Aye.
President Reed. 8 aye votes, 1 present.
Board Bill 176 is out with a due pass.
Thank you all.
Can't answer that. No, you're fine. Hey, it's very educational. And maybe that's why they put it on there, because you might be opposed to it. Yeah. Yeah, as long as it's wrong. If you weren't on the committee, then you'd have to go to the table. Okay, next on the agenda is Board Bill 115. Alderman President Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 115 allows for the establishment of Friends of accounts for each of our 7 neighborhood recreation centers across the city of St. Louis. I think that this is important to do today, especially given the public safety issues we faced across our city. And we know the role that these types of centers can play in helping to get our kids engaged in more positive activities across the city. This isn't new to the city. It was done in 1998 with Friends of Forest Park, and in 2011 with Friends of Lafayette Square Park. And as you all know, those two have been very, very successful. There is over $10 million in unmet capital improvements across all of the recreation centers today. And you know, we had $2.65 million that we included in the general obligation bond that did not pass. So our recreation centers are still there, and they're in dire needs of capital improvements. And this allows private donations to our rec centers, and I think that is a great thing. Allows private individuals to donate to each of our rec centers across the city. It allows residents and neighborhoods to come together to hold fundraisers and things of that nature, and to get people interested in the redevelopment of those rec centers all across the city. We also have with us today Dan Skillman, the Parks Director, who is here to speak in favor of the board bill also. And that's it.
First of all, we'll hear from Evelyn Rice Peoples. That's back
and we
here
also
too.
have Evelyn too.
Evelyn, after you came here, I sure wouldn't forget you.
I'd like to have that 30 million from the History Museum.
That's what I said. Should go to the city, right?
I'd like to know who it is so we could try to get some.
We support this because right now we don't generate a lot of revenue. We don't get a lot of donations in city recreation. And $12,000 or $1,200 or $2,500 is sort of a drop in the bucket for general revenue, but at an individual rec center, $400, $500, $900, $1,200 can make a difference. And if we can embrace the community and say, we want to do some fundraising, for example, at Wohl Center, and right now we have people in the NFL, NBA who came out of Wohl, whose coaches helped them go to Chaminade and those schools and go on and do very, very well. I think it could really help us.
I'll go ahead and if there's any questions for Evelyn Rice Peoples first, we'll go down the list and then we'll hear Skillman and then we'll come back to the president, because I know there's going to be some questions. So, Alderman French.
No questions from Mr. People.
Alderman Vaquero.
No questions.
Alderman Villa.
I guess my question, I don't know that it's necessarily for Evelyn, but if someone had desired to make a contribution of $100,000 a year ago to Wohl, we didn't have the methodology to take that?
We do. We actually, presently, we have people who make small donations, particularly to boxing. Devin Alexander gave us $10,000. It's the most anyone's ever given us. We set up a special fund in the controller's office, and the fund is called Boxing Donation City Recreation, and can only be used for donations. So theoretically, to answer your question, if someone wanted to give us a donation, we could request a special fund, but it's a laborious process. And right now, we are not entitled, or we're not really authorized to seek additional funding. In the past, it hasn't been perceived as appropriate to go out and say, will you help fix, for example, 12th and Park Center or Marquette or Cherokee? And I believe this would enable us to do it, and we could do it with some enthusiasm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Ingracia. No questions. Alderwoman Tyus.
So just going off what the Alderman from the 11th said, because so now with this new, board bill, we would actually have funds. So my question is it going to be one big fund, or is it going to be how many different pots? 7 different pots?
It would be separate. It would be separate pots for each separate rec center.
Okay, so, but we still, if somebody, say, wanted to give money to Wohl, but for boxing, then would it then have to be a separate thing? Because otherwise, if you give it to Wohl, who's going to be let's first go back to this. Who would be in charge of this fund?
My understanding is that a committee would be set up, sort of a Friends, we'll use Wohl, Friends of Wohl Center, comprised of users of the center, and that committee would make decisions as to what the money would be spent on, and they would have to come to agreement.
That's, the committee would be set up of users of WOA?
Okay, I just got further clarification. Our committee, using WOA, my WOA senior citizens are the adults.
That's good, because that's WOA is coming back to me in a few minutes.
Okay.
Right,
So,
okay.
they would make the recommendation.
Uh-huh.
Their recommendation would come to the Parks Department. At that point, Parks, including Parks and Recreation, would then agree to go with the recommendation or not, and that would be the final decision, is within the
So
department.
you wouldn't talk to the alderperson of the ward at all about what's going on? So if Park said, I want to just go up into the middle of Woles and put a giant Christmas tree with sparks coming out of it, you could do that and just go ahead and do that? Because if I was the alderman, then what if I wanted to take it down?
Well, in the past, we've really involved our aldermen.
Okay.
Our aldermen have been our biggest heroes.
So could the alderman then combine funds with this special committee? Do you foresee that being something? Because I know there needs to be a lot of work at Woles. It needs to be parked. That's why Frank is giving it to me, because he don't want it. But it needs to be parking. It's like, I could spend $100,000 up in there, and that would be a drop in the bucket up there. It's very, and it's my neighborhood. Both of my neighborhoods go to Woles.
Yeah, you've said that.
Right. But could you foresee putting funds there?
Yes.
And,
I didn't see it.
would this be, there would be no finite to this. This would be an ongoing fund for as long as we needed to do it, right?
Yes.
Okay, and would there be a limitation on how much somebody could, give to the funds? One of the problems we had in a prior administration was something didn't get administered correctly, and we got a black eye for something that I believe was a very good program.
Okay.
And, you know,
Yeah.
so, what are the restrictions or safeguards that we have in fact in place now so that that doesn't happen again, okay? Because before, people were given money, and then that's something happened, and everybody blamed the program, and the program was a good program.
Right.
Right.
Well, you know, Alderwoman, you got I got two black eyes.
Now, when I say we, I'm saying the city.
Yeah.
Okay, I count that, me too. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So what has changed? That's what I'm asking you. What would change that would make people more comfortable to do that?
If I may defer somewhat to Mr. President, because he has the inner workings of it, but there are many checks and balances built in. It includes the citizens' recommendation to the city, and there is a finite turnaround time of receipt of the money and use of the money specifically.
And would it be, do you see this being for programs, for capital improvements, for both, or what?
Theoretically, for both. My heart hurts when I look at the capital side. There are some things that I just really personally would like to see done on the capital side first. I get an awful lot of volunteers who make the programs work.
Right.
So my leaning is toward capital.
Okay.
But also, if there's funding for programs, if specifically, for example, we have someone that wants to do funding for Tiny Tots for swimming. If they wanted to pay specifically for that, they could do that.
Well, and I'm gonna tell you, and I can go speak specifically for WOA, because the complaint I get the most about WOA is that it is so overused by people who don't live in the neighborhood. It's supposed to be a neighborhood park. The neighborhood doesn't feel like they get to use it, okay? It has become more of a citywide park, not citywide, but at least area-wide park than it has, which is supposed to be a neighborhood park. So when the neighborhood comes to me, they're always first of all, they were shocked that I had everything but WOA and but the park out there. But that can be pretty much easily changed. But when you talk about putting a committee together of users, that might be, because who is up there a lot of times now are people who playing baseball, football from the county. You can't get up in there. I don't foresee the people from the county sitting on a committee to tell the city of St. Louis in a neighborhood park. I would be very much opposed to that. If you're talking about committee of users who live in the neighborhood or live in the city, I can see that. But I do not see somebody, because you can't get to, if you come up there during football season, you can't get to it, but it's not from the people in the neighborhood. It's from all the people who bring their kids in to play football up there or baseball up there and block the streets, throw trash in the streets, and make the people who live in the community in the Kingsway East and West, of which I live in the Kingsway East, feel like they can't even use it. So I just want to tell you, I would be very much opposed to seeing a committee made of people who don't live in the city making decisions. I know that's what happens with Forest Park, but I think you all need to refine that, and you need to be bringing the neighborhood around, because they're the people who have to put up with impositions of people cutting through their yards and things like that. So I know you don't have everything down pat right now. And I do think this is a good idea, but I'm just saying I think you ought to rethink that just composed of users, because that can be people outside.
We would also include the alderman. And for example, like our seniors in the morning,
yes.
they're all neighborhood.
Yes, they are.
And they get upset every summer when we have to use the pool more for the day camp kids, right, who also are neighborhood.
Right.
And right now we're trying to make, and we need more security, but the police have helped. The football,
there all the time.
The football, basketball people should be at the top of the hill and leave the bottom of the hill for the seniors and the little kids. But it's because we're so good. The staff is so good.
And I want to get off of being specific. I just want to say that I think this is a good idea, okay?
Thank you.
I think you need some fine tuning, that's all, okay?
Okay.
And I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Alderwoman Murphy.
I have no questions at this time.
Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First of all, hello to Evelyn.
Hello.
I don't get to see you that much, except that we do a lot of work together. And before I go to my questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to publicly congratulate Evelyn, her department, and her staff. They do incredible work over there, and most especially at the last minute with me and my craziness. My residents wanted some things this summer, and usually that southwest area over there is not really looked at as in need, and you all came through with a journalism camp as well as a health and fitness camp this summer, and it was well received, and I appreciate it. The only other thing I wanted to add into this is that as we consider this, we put some strong parameters in here when we're talking about raising money. We need to make sure that the guidelines are very strict, because we don't want to put our staff, our city staff, in jeopardy, dealing with any committee that may get out of order. And so there really needs some very strong guidelines here. And I'm not sure, which departments are going to hold the money and all of that.
I can go into all of that.
Okay, and yeah, well, that was my main thing, because I remember what happened before. And then also, I need Gamble Center listed on here for capital needs.
Okay.
I mean, we've done very well now. We put about 800,000 over there, but we need some more.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's it, sir.
Okay, I think I don't remember if Alderwoman Krewson was in the room then, but I see her over there now. So did you have any questions?
No questions.
And then before we go to President Reed, Dan, do you want to come up and put your 4 cents in? Or should it be 7 cents?
25 cents.
Should it be 7 cents, one for each center?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Yes, I'd like to support this board bill. As President Reed indicated, we do have a lot of capital needs in our recreation centers. I believe you used the figure of $10 million, which is a number we've been carrying for a number of years, because we have no other source of funding to do capital improvements in our rec centers. We used to get money out of the half-cent sales tax. That money was removed from our budget probably about 5 years ago. And I think this year we actually got some money back. But it's a small amount compared to what we need to do work in a lot of these centers. And trying to get friends groups that will help us to maybe beat the bushes and find some private dollars out there, we might be able to pool some large funds to try to make some major improvements to some of our facilities that really need renovation.
Alderman French.
No questions.
Alderman Vaquero.
No questions.
Alderman Villa.
No question, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
No questions.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Mr. Skillman, did y'all just hear you say that 5 years ago they took they took the half-cent sales tax away from you?
Well, we haven't gotten it for 5 years.
But, so I was here when we did that, then one of the things that, why we did that was that you guys were gonna be always getting some of that money. So have they so in 5 years you haven't gotten anything?
Not out of the sales tax, no ma'am. This is the first year. In the fiscal year 16, we did get $500,000 this year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's it.
Alderwoman Murphy.
No question.
And Alderwoman Davis. And I don't have any questions. President Reed, you're on.
Right, thank you. First, to echo some of the compliments of our Parks Department, Dan and Evelyn, they do a tremendous job, and they do it with, very slim resources in a lot of cases. And the Alderwoman from the first talked about some of those. We have an opportunity like other people around us are taking advantage of. St. Louis County, they're doing this. They're setting up Friends accounts to address some of their parks and rec center needs. And I think this gives us an opportunity to have funds directly impact the facilities all across our neighborhoods, all across the city. To answer a couple of the other questions, Alderwoman Davis, you asked about the safeguards that are in place. The funds, when any rec center or anybody in the Parks Department, when they receive any funds in a check, in the form of a check or whatever, they have 1 week to get that check to the comptroller's office, right? And then the comptroller will apply that to that specific Friends account. And then it'll follow some of our regular processes. Like, for example, for capital needs will be addressed based on the recommendations from the Capital Committee. So if the Capital Committee is already identified, like the Capital Committee has already identified over $10 million worth of capital needs across our rec centers, right? So the next phase in the process would be, once funds are received, the Parks Department, along with that local committee, and I think Alderwoman from First, they did a great job of outlining what that committee should look like. And I think you're right, it needs to have, that elected officials surrounding it, and people from that neighborhood. So thanks for clarifying that point. They will work with the rec center and with the Parks Department to say, these are the needs and this is what we'd like to address. You can address programmatic needs and capital needs from these funds. So I would just really appreciate everyone's favorable approval of the board bill. We also working with the IT department to set up a portal so that people can donate online directly to each one of these centers. We have an amendment to the bill that would hard-code it within the bill. I'm open to taking up that amendment if you guys want to take it up, just to have it be part of the bill that, allows for the creation of the portal and allows for online donations to the specific recreation centers. Can you hand this to Joe? You got to get it, Kenny. Hey, Donna, you have to give it to him first. Yeah.
Just give me one.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, what you have before you is the amendment to Board Bill number 115 to be amended on page 3, line 14 to page 3, line 19 to add the paragraph that you see at the bottom, section 6, online fundraising portal establishment. The City Information Technology Services Agency shall establish with the city's website a portal to allow for online fundraising. The portal shall give residents a secure way to donate to one of the 7 recreation centers listed herein, or to the city parks, or to a city park, or to a specific amenity within the city park as identified by the Department of Parks, Forestry, and Recreation.
Okay, what I'll do now is I'm going to take questions on the amendment. And actually, I'll change that a little bit. While we're doing questions, because President Reed is up there now, if you have questions on either the bill or the amendment, we'll go ahead and do it both at the same time. So, Alderwoman Krewson? See, I didn't see her disappear on me. Alderman French?
No questions.
Alderman Vaccaro?
No question.
Alderman Villa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, have the 2 gentlemen that are standing there on your left, have they been deaccessioned pursuant to the previous bill we heard? Rejection at the new museum?
I don't know these guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks.
Alderman, I think they're lining up to be the first contributors.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
No questions.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Mr. President, you talked about that 1 week after you get a check, it has to be to the comptroller. Who would be getting the initial check in the first place to get it to the comptroller?
Well, we're going to work with the Parks Department to determine like the intake of it. Like if you know how some people, there may be somebody at a rec center with their kid or whatever, and they say, you know, I want to donate $20 to rec center. They get it to that rec center like that.
So you
And
anticipate small donations, not just large donations?
yeah, it'd be small and large donations.
And do you anticipate taking cash?
No.
Good.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, that is what got the
Yeah,
program.
I remember.
Okay.
And like you said, that was a good program.
It is,
and
it
we
was,
can't-
it still is. I defend it to this day. It was a good program, and it got smeared, because, and it wasn't the first time it had happened, so I know all the players. It had happened before, they cleaned it up,
Yeah.
but they didn't clean it up, and the cash is what got in the way.
Oh, exactly.
And I was gonna say, if it's gonna be cash, if at all we're gonna do that, we're not gonna take, so it has to be PayPal, check, credit card.
Exactly.
Online.
Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Alderwoman Murphy.
No question.
I'll entertain a motion on Amendment 1. If I have a...
Objection.
Okay, so call the roll.
Alderwoman Krewson. Alderman French.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Villa. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Green. Chairman Ortman.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
8 aye votes to pass.
Thank you.
That's on the amendment. So do we have any more questions?
Can we explain this amendment? So I want to make sure I'm reading this right, because that's my question. Because I see beginning on page blank, 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 blank.
Oh, okay. All right. And then at the very bottom where it has the paragraph, that's what's to be inserted, beginning on page 3, line 14, after the words "communities served."
President Reed actually went through that before the vote.
Okay, but so What's, okay, so I'm looking at this at beginning on page 3 down here, but what is this up here? Maybe I'm just,
Here's what,
Extra paperwork.
yeah, that's,
I'm like, what is this?
yeah, they typed it at the bottom of one of the standard
Okay,
forms,
I got
basically.
that, but
Alderwoman, if you go like this,
Okay.
that'll kind of eliminate the confusion.
oh, okay, don't read it all, just read part of it, okay?
Just
I'm
the
not
second
trained to
half.
do that.
Yeah, that's what I had to figure out when he was going through it, what he was at, where he was, so,
Okay, all right, now I'm better.
okay. So I'll entertain a motion on Board Bill 115.
Seconded.
Previous roll.
Hearing no objections to previous roll, Board Bill 115 is out with a due pass.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Good job, Michael.